Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following everything happening with the latest gaming hardware. I'm Daemon Hadfield. I'm joined this week by Max Scoville, host of IGN's PlayStation podcast, Podcast Beyond.
Hello there.
And from IGN's Xbox podcast, Podcast Unlocked, Stella Chung.
Hello. Glad to be back.
And we're celebrating two birthdays this week. Both PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S are turning 4 years old this week. So it is time to take a look back at the last 4 years and grade each platform on their performance. PS5, Xbox Series X and S, both very comparable consoles, but not comparable in terms of how many units both have sold. 66 million PS5 units have been sold, and that's compared to around 28 million for Xbox Series X and S. So for every one Xbox that's sold, about 2.5 PlayStation 5s are sold. I think what we've seen, the trends over this generation, PlayStation maybe seems a little bit more interested in hardware than Xbox does. You know, we have the woefully under-supported PSVR 2, but then the PlayStation Portal was a big hit last year. And of course, they just released the PlayStation 5 Pro, which is now the most powerful and most expensive way to play console games these days. No news of a mid-gen refresh coming from Xbox. They are working on the handheld, but that's apparently years away. So who knows if that's even going to be part of this generation. Both consoles very comparable in terms of power capabilities. I think maybe Xbox is maybe a little bit more powerful and PS5 a little bit faster, but very, very close in terms of what they can do. But it really comes down to the games, and I think it's probably a little bit hard to argue that PlayStation still has the edge on games. It has the bigger library of quality games. We know for a fact 54 games. PS5 has 54 games with a 90 or above on OpenCritic, and that is compared to, what's that number that I wrote down? 39 games with a 90 or above for Xbox. So I think you've just got the bigger library, but then Xbox has the edge with things like Game Pass. So I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to hear what you guys think. So let's begin with you. If you were a professor evaluating Xbox's past 4 years, what would be your assessment?
Oh man, 4 years it feels like a long time, but it's also not. So I think I would probably give it a solid B, not a B plus, not a B minus, a solid B. It's been fine. I mean, there have been, I think the thing that Xbox is doing now more than anything else is really expanding outside of just the Xbox ecosystem, right? So it's reaching out to PC. There are talks of it going even more across platform, which is great. So I think Xbox is finally figuring out what they want their vision to be, and it's not necessarily with the Xbox, like the box itself. So I think they're figuring it out. So I think a solid B is probably about fair for the last 4 years, and also probably for the last year as well.
Max, how about you? Right off the bat, how would you say Sony has done the past 4 years?
I'm going to go with C, maybe C plus.
Wow.
Depending. It's I mean, you know what? That's the thing. C's get degrees. It's been 4 years. The PlayStation can have its diploma, and it can go on to be a PlayStation 5 Pro. It can enter the workforce. But no, like that's exactly it. Like there's been some great games. The big kind of running theme though is that the PS5 is been the best way to play PS4 games for a lot of examples there, and we have had a handful of really cool exclusives, but this year in particular felt a bit dry. Helldivers 2 was huge, big, very exciting. It also marked Sony's sort of first really, really big successful foray into the PC space, which is awesome. I'm glad these games are getting more, eyes and hands on them, or whatever you want to call it. It's always good to have a bigger audience on that front. But there's also the massive fumble that was Concord, which was deeply disappointing. We saw that huge push for live service games, which I want to say was the sort of after effects of the Jim Ryan heading up Sony, which was sort of what was going on at the beginning of the console generation. And then just recently in an earnings call, they doubled down and committed to having a new single player game every fiscal year from 2025 onward, which, that's great. It would be nice to have like a little more of a roadmap in that sense. I'm obviously not going to tell us the next, 5 fiscal years ahead, but yeah, I mean, the PS5 is doing great. Nothing I say right now can detract from that. It has a huge install base. It has some amazing games for it. It's a great way to play current gen games. So is Xbox Series X. I think it really just kind of comes down to two companies doing very different things. It's also very much in line with what they've always done. I've said this before, but Sony is a consumer electronics manufacturer. That's their job. They make consumer electronics. They dabble in other stuff. They've got a motion picture studio. They've got, they make video games for their electronics. But we see Sony putting out some rather novel little devices like the PlayStation Portal, which was the handheld none of us exactly asked for, but the people who got them really like that little thing. The PS5 Pro, from all the reports I've heard, is very impressive, but also kind of not really worth breaking the bank for. The PSVR 2, we just talked about this on Beyond this week. It is really, really, really cool, and there's some great games if you buy the PC adapter that lets you plug it into Steam and play games that way. That could change, though. We are slowly seeing a little steady trickle of PSVR 2 games. We just got the is it Metro Awakening? That's it, Metro Awakening VR. And then there's Behemoth, which is Skydance Studios. I haven't heard one way or the other how that is. Yeah, it looks cool. And then in very late December, basically Christmas Eve practically, we're getting Alien Rogue Incursion, which looks very scary. If you've ever wanted aliens leaping at your face in VR, that is the way to do it. So it's getting some new stuff. These various things. As for PS5 Pro support, more and more games are getting patches to go with that. But I feel like none of this is really quite getting people excited. Like if you bought a PS5, cool, you got a PS5. It gets a lot of cool games. It could get more cool games. I hope we get some cool games announced during the Game Awards. That's what I hope to see, because we're in the tail end of the console's life cycle, and that's often when we see some of the best games in a console generation come out. So it'd be kind of nice to know what's cooking over at PlayStation Studios.
Yeah, I mean, we know they've got Ghost of Yotei coming next year. But Xbox is in a pretty good spot right now. They're about to release Flight Simulator 2024. Indiana Jones is in December. And then Avowed is coming up early next year. Definitely stuff to be excited about. But Stella, how do you feel about the Xbox Series, the game library overall, as it compares to PlayStation 5?
Maybe that one would be. Are we still grading, or is it more just like a? How do you...
No, you don't need to grade every little thing.
Okay. I think it's fine. I think there's been a bit of an outcry on how there are a bit less exclusives that have been coming out recently, and we have been seeing that. I mean, the exclusives that have come out, I think we can probably count on like both hands, maybe. I'm not sure. But yeah, they're not. They've all come out to other platforms, and I think that's probably the bigger thing here. I think personally, between the library that is on PlayStation versus what is accessible to Xbox and PC, I think PlayStation might have the more impressive lineup, but I think that's just in like recent years. But we'll see. Indiana Jones is coming out as this commercial is showing us. So who knows? Maybe that could be the one that really sweeps it for us.
But I do think Xbox has an edge on services, especially Game Pass.
Yeah.
Launching all of their first-party games day one into Game Pass. The fact that if you're a Game Pass subscriber, you just got Call of Duty Black Ops 6 on day one at no extra cost. I think that's a really huge benefit and something that Xbox can be proud of that PlayStation does not have.
Yeah, no, I think Game Pass has done a lot for Xbox since launch, and especially recently, like with Call of Duty. That's probably the biggest reason why I'm giving them a B for the last 4 years, just because it's a huge get. And I can already tell that it's I mean, they've already said that it's brought a lot of new players over who were on the fence about Call of Duty over now. So that's like a permanent plus to their community they have now.
So, like, looking ahead, Max, do you feel like you're having a hard time, or you feel like there isn't a lot of excitement for PlayStation out there? Looking ahead into 2025, which platform do you feel has the most exciting, as for what we know right now, the most exciting 2025?
I would say Xbox, I guess. All we know that's coming in 2025 to PlayStation exclusively is Ghost of Yotei, which looks killer, looks very good, and Death Stranding 2 on the beach is still supposedly on track for that, though. We just saw Death Stranding is now fully property of Kojima Productions, and Death Stranding came to Xbox just a couple weeks ago. Got a surprise launch there. So presumably that's going to come to Xbox eventually too. As far as like the PlayStation Studio stuff, the only thing we know of past that is Wolverine, which I would love to get an update of any kind on. But Sony has a bunch of studios that have been doing something, and we don't know what they've been doing. So it would be kind of cool to... I want a PS5 Pro, but they haven't really shown off anything that would justify that quite yet. It's in there somewhere.
Okay, so if someone doesn't own a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series, they're going to buy one and only one this holiday season. Would you recommend an Xbox?
If they're stuck between those and they don't have a PC?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, let's just say they don't have anything. They want to get either a PS5 or an Xbox.
I would say Xbox just because of Game Pass. I think that's just really valuable. You get so many games, especially with Indiana Jones coming out, and I think you would just get way more for the value. So I would say Xbox.
Max, how about you? Which one would you recommend?
Oh, absolutely Xbox.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you're looking at somebody who's trying to get in on the console generation at this point, and money's an issue, you can get the Series X is incredibly powerful. The PS5 Pro might be beating it, but it's obviously still like a very big beefy machine right there. It's also got tons of storage space, and again, Game Pass is a huge factor here. If you don't want to spend too much money, you could get a Series S and get Game Pass as well. And like, I'm thinking about how much I would have lost my mind if I had Game Pass as a kid growing up when I didn't have a ton of money, because it's just, you get brand new games for no extra cost the day they come out, which is, again, I'm sure Microsoft is kind of scratching their heads over whether or not that was a good idea. It might have sort of disrupted the industry, but on the consumer end of things, that's pretty cool. I can't complain about that too much. Yeah, I mean, Sony makes very nice hardware too, and obviously there's going to be some cool exclusives coming down the pipe at some point. And if you are playing games that don't have crossplay, odds are your friends maybe have a Sony device just based on the sheer install base. Yeah, I don't know. I think Xbox has more options. They also, Phil Spencer has been pretty transparent about talking about plans for the future. If Indiana Jones is a make or break for which console you're going to buy, it's going to come to PlayStation next year. So there's that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think anyone's going to be able to accuse us of having a PlayStation bias this episode. I like both the PS5 and Xbox Series X a lot. I own both. I use both. I think I probably use PS5 a little more, only because I was so much heavily into PS4 last gen. Phil Spencer himself has said they lost the worst generation to lose last gen when everyone moved into a more digital game library. But that's the only reason why. I think they're both very comparable machines, and I think PlayStation wins just a little bit on games, and I think Xbox wins on services. So there's definitely like not an obvious stinker out of the two of them. We had the results of last episode's poll. We were talking about the PlayStation 5 Pro. We wanted to know which feature of the PS5 Pro was the most interesting to you. And the winner with about 37% of the vote was higher frame rates. That's definitely what people want. They want to be playing in 60 frames per second. Gosh darn it. And that 2 terabyte hard drive, not very popular at all. Just under 50% of the votes for that one. So, new poll for you to vote on for next episode. Which console platform are you most excited about going into 2025? PlayStation or Xbox, which is what we're talking about here. But throw a little curveball in there. Nintendo is the only one that we know has actual new hardware coming next year. So we'll be talking a lot about that on this very show next year, hopefully. Make sure to vote at IGN.com the day this episode goes live. We'll share the results with you next week. And that's going to do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. Thank you to both Max and Stella. Thank you to Jobert and everyone working behind the scenes to make this episode possible. My name is Daemon. We'll be back next week with the latest gaming hardware news. We'll see you then.